Konnichiwa, everyone, and welcome to part 4 of What If Naruto Had Kubikiribocho. Alrighty then. I am so glad people are enjoying this, or at least I hope they are enjoying this. This has always been a story. I don't remember if I even finished reading this story last time, but in any case, I want everyone to know that I am in the process of getting a server set up on Discord. I have a friend, Solar, who is helping make it. And honestly, I have no idea what to say, so I will attempt to put the link to the server down below if I can. If not, uh, I have no idea. Enough being awkward. You know the drill by now. Decapitate the subscription button. Chidori the like button and hit the notification bell. And leave a comment and if possible, leave a suggestion of a story you want me to read in the future down below. In the meantime, roll that intro. Chapter 4 The Forest of Death. Blue Eyes examined bronzed hands as they turned and clenched into fists. Birds chirped outside the window, their songs a pleasant sound to wake to on a morning such as this. Today was the start of a second exam. The Forest of Death. Naruto rolled the name around in his head. With a title like that, something tells me we won't be getting out of there without shedding at least a little blood. Just gotta be sure it's not ours. The blonde had already seen death. He stood there and watched as the light faded from his Zabuza's eyes. And he watched men be killed when the rogue ninja slaughtered Gato's thugs, before carving into the man himself. But now there's a real possibility that he would be the one ending someone's life. And Naruto wasn't completely sure what to make of that. In his wanting to honor the fallen mist shinobi, he knew, in the back of his mind, that it meant taking on the deaths of others. But he had managed to not think about it too much since then. Being busy with training helped in that regard. But with the second stage of the Chunin exam staring him in the face, and it being held at a place with a name like Forest of Death, the blonde knew that he wasn't going to get through it without someone being on the business end of his sword. Was he ready for that? That's a stupid question, he berated himself. No one's ever ready for their first kill. Zabuza probably had to psych himself up big time before taking on that graduating class in Kyuri. The man had killed over 100 trained students at the age of 9, and Naruto was just now wondering. And Naruto is now. The man had killed over 100 trained students at the age of 9, and Naruto was just now worrying about killing his first opponent at the age of 13. The blonde shook his head. Oh, how times were different. But I gotta do this, he said to himself while getting up from his bed. I can't honor his memory if I chicken out when it counts. And besides, if I use the hidden mist jutsu, I should be okay, right? Since I won't have to see it. Using that reasoning to anchor his resolve, Naruto walked over to the door, slid Kubikiribocho in its place along his back, before exiting his apartment. He had an exam to pass, and he wasn't going to get there in time if he stayed here. Leaving his weights at home again, it didn't take the fledgling killer very long to arrive at his intended destination. Within minutes of speeding over rooftops, the blonde found himself standing atop the edge of a mid-level apartment complex overlooking the forest of death. Looks like I wasn't the only one who decided to leave early. Indeed, there were numerous teams already standing around the gated training ground, with more coming up from the roads. Blue Eyes scanned the crowd until they settled on a pair standing off to the side. One with a head of raven black hair, the other's a vibrant pink. Naruto vanished from the rooftop, then reappeared on the ground before standing over his teammates. Sasuke was the first to see him. Remember what happened yesterday? The Uchiha gave his blonde comrade a heated glare, which Naruto readily ignored. Sakura, Sakura, seeing her crush's enhanced bad mood, looked around to find what had upset him so. When her eyes landed on Naruto, she sighed. Can't you two go one day without acting this way? Naruto, whatever you did to Sasuke-kun, can't you just apologize before the second exam starts? This made the accused blonde scoff. There's nothing for me to apologize for, Sakura. Besides, the Tem knows better than to get distracted when it counts. We'll be fine. Yeah, but I'd rather not have to play referee while you two butt heads with each other, Sakura groaned eternally. However, before anything more could be said, Anko called out to the teams and instructed them to converge near her. I guess since all the teams are here a little early, there's no point in putting off the test, Sasuke observed. Then, motioning his teammates, he began to skulk over towards the examiner. Instead of trying to walk beside her raven-haired love, Sakura decided to hold back and walk beside the other male on her team. She wanted answers, and her best bet was to ask the blonde. Naruto, what happened yesterday? Sasuke-kun was more angry than normal. Sasuke-kun was more angry than normal when I showed up at the testing area. What did you do? Sakura, I already told you. It's not important. All that matters right now is passing the second exam. The Tem knows that too, so just let it go for now. You can wipe the little baby's nose later. Ouch! Naruto's gruff response was cut short by the pink-haired teammate slamming her fist into the crown of his head. The young Kunoichi gave the boy an angry look. Growling, she spoke. Don't talk about Sasuke-kun like that, you idiot! That's probably the reason he's so upset with you, because of that smart mouth of yours. I wouldn't recommend beating up your teammate before this exam, girlie. You're gonna need all the help you can just to survive it. Hearing the voice behind her made Sakura jump. Whooping around, kunai in hand, she came face to face with the proctor, Anko. The purple-haired woman grabbed hold of the younger Kunichi's wrists and wagged her free finger in a scolding manner. And I definitely wouldn't recommend whipping one of those out on me. It might just get you killed. Sakura was a little shaken up from the unexpected encounter. Stuttered her response. Well, it's not like we need Naruto Baka to help us get through the test anyway. He's the weakest member. Anko stood to her full height, forcing the pink-haired girl to look up as she gave her retort. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure about that. From what I could tell, he's stronger than both of you put together. But you did bring up one of the rules for the test, so let me get back to my explanation. With that, the woman vanished in a burst of speed and reappeared back before the fence. All right, listen up. The second phase of the tuning exams will consist of a 5-day survival test, mixed with the capture the flag. Each team will be given one scroll, either a heaven or an earth, and will be required to obtain the other scroll by taking one that belongs to another team. This way, at least half of the teams will be cut from the exams. What? Shoji Yakamichi cried in despair. 5 days? But what am I supposed to do for food? Uncle just stared at the overweight boy in surprise. Even she could go 5 days without food. Well, it is a forest, so just find some of the edible plants or riverwood fish. You'll be fine. The plump Guinean sagged his shoulders at the thought of eating plants. Shikamaru groaned and threw his hand up. When Uncle motioned him to speak, the boy asked about giving up. There is no giving up, she replied matter-of-factly. You think in the middle of battle you could just throw down your weapon and say, sorry, I quit? She thought about it for a moment, giggled sadistically, and continued, well, I guess you could, but it'll probably get you killed. Shikamaru hung his head in response to her answer and grumbled about what a drag the test was going to be. Now, Uncle returned to the rules. Your goal is to Your goal is going to be to obtain one of each scroll and then bring them to the central tower, which is about 6 miles from any one starting gate. But then why are we being given 5 days if it's only 6 miles from the start? Ino wondered out loud. To her, it didn't really make sense. She could run that in less than a day. Because you'll be dealing with the dangerous wildlife and plant life in the forest alongside the threat of other teams, little lady. 5 days may seem like a long time, but trust me when I tell you, they'll go by in a blink of an eye if you aren't careful. Seeing that the platinum blonde was done asking questions, Uncle returned to her rules. Finally, there is more than one way to fail this test. Number one is obvious. If you are unable to obtain both scrolls within the time limit. 2. Even if you have both but fail to make it to the tower in time. 3. If only two of your squad 3. If only 2 members of your squad make it to the tower. And 4. If you look inside the scroll at any time during the test. Kiba raised his hand. But what if one of the scrolls just kind of rolls open and you take a peek? Let's just put it this way, kid. You don't want to know. The special Jonin grinned. During a mission, when you're asked to transport important documents, you're never allowed to look inside. So why should now be any different? Seeing that everyone seemed to understand the test now, Uncle pulled a stack of paperwork from her trench coat and handed it to Naruto. Here, kid, pass these out to the other brats and then take one for yourself. She turned to address the crowd in front of her. What's being handed out are consent forms. You can't take the second exam without filling one out. People may die during the test, and Konoha needs to know that you are all okay with that. Once you finish, take it to the stand over there. Trade for a scroll, and then get up to the next entrance. Then get up next to an entrance. La 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 la. Can't read for crud. After handing out the forms, Naruto walked away from his team and read over the paper he was required to fill out. It was pretty standard stuff as far as he could tell, and it made sense to have them hand one in. After all, the Leaf can't have another village claiming their ninja was being picked off unfairly now, can they? A quiet mumbling caught the bandaged blonde's attention. Looking up, his eyes were met with Hinata standing underneath a tree. She looked to be mulling over whether she should sign the form or not. You know, he called out as he walked up to the young heiress. You and your team kind of have an unfair advantage, Hinata-san. The girl in question jumped a little before turning to see who had addressed her. Hinata's cheeks pinked when she saw that it was Naruto who was speaking to her. Then what he'd said finally registered, and she stammered out a quiet response. What makes you say that, Naruto? Well, your team specializes in checking and recon, right? The Shy Kunoichi nodded. When the Shy Kunoichi nodded, he continued. That means you guys must do survival drill a lot. Plus, with your Byakugan, there's no way you guys are gonna get caught off guard. I know I wouldn't want to fight you, Hinata-san. You wouldn't? Naruto chuckled lightly at her surprised look. Of course not. You're definitely one of the strongest kunoichi out here. Probably the strongest after that crazy chick from Suna. I don't know if I'd survive a fight with someone so strong. The way the girl's face filled with color and her lips curled into a bashful smile. Naruto knew he'd hit his mark. She would compete, and she'd do just fine. Turning around so as to get back to his team, the blonde threw up his head and said his goodbyes. Wait, Naruto! He stopped and looked back in confusion. Hinata was nervously fiddling with something in her small hands. Walking closer, Naruto asked, "What is it, Hinata-san?" Hinata held out her hands, and Blue Eyes inspected the item that held. It was a small brown jar. It's a medicine, in case you get hurt during the exam. I made it myself. Naruto looked at the dark-haired girl in shock. She was willing to help him during an exam that decided who would become a Chunin and who'd stay together for another 6 months. Hinata-san, I don't think I could accept this. I mean, what about your own team? Hinata shook her head and made a dismissive hum. Kiba and Shino already have one, and I always keep one in my weapon pouch just in case. I made this one for you. The blonde was thrown for a loop. She made an extra just for him? Thank you, Hinata. No one's, well, nobody's ever done something like this for me before. I don't really know what to say. The young heiress just shook her head and again and quietly replied, You don't have to say anything, Naruto. I just, well, hey, Naruto Baka, hurry up and get over here. We need your consent form to get a scroll, you know? Sakura's loud voice interrupted them. Hinata jumped in surprise while Naruto let out a small groan. I'm sorry, Hinata, he apologized. Maybe we could talk after the second exam is over, and there won't be any annoying interruptions. With that, he waved goodbye again and headed off to join his squad. Back by the tree, Hinata smiled while her lavender eyes dropped down shyly. He stopped calling me Hinata-san. Squad 7 stood at the gate they'd chosen to begin the second exam at. Naruto had slipped the jar Hinata had given him into his weapon pouch for safekeeping. I think it'd be best if I helped to scroll you guys. Sasuke and Sakura turned to him with looks of disbelief on their faces. Are you kidding, Dobe? You're probably the first person to go after. Why would he give it to you? Well, even if that is true, which it's not, we could use that against them, right? They won't expect you to hand over the scroll to one of us, Sasuke, so they don't think that you had it. The blonde's logic made sense, but the Uchiha wasn't having it. No, we can't afford to place the scroll at risk. I'll hold on to it for now, and then once we get the heaven scroll, you could carry that one. Naruto just sighed and crossed his arms. If this was how they were going to be, chances are someone was going to get seriously hurt soon. Sakura, who hadn't bothered to comment on the blonde's crazy plan, chose instead to question him on another matter. So, Naruto, what were you and Hinata-san talking about when I found you? You guys were pretty close. Was I an interruption to something? Hmm? Hinata just seemed a little unsure of herself, Sakura. So I decided to give her a little pep talk, that's all. You should have just left her alone, Sasuke butted in. If she had gotten scared, then she would have dropped out, and then Kiba and Shino would have had to as well, leaving us with that much less competition, Dobe. Naruto's brow scrunched in annoyance, and he shot his teammate a slight glare. What are you so worried about, Tim? They're a leaf shinobi like us. Chances are they won't even try to attack one of their own. Besides, just because your heart's cold and black doesn't mean mine has to be. This seemed to strike a nerve with Uchiha, because like the day before, his body tensed in preparation for action. But before he could do or say anything, the speakers above their gates came to life. All right, you maggots. It's time for the second phase of the tuning exams to begin. With that, With that, the tuning behind the gate unlocked the padlock but kept it closed. But before you little brats head out, I've got one more piece of advice for you all. Just don't die. From there, all the gates were thrown open, and many of the teams shot off into the darkness of the forest. Team 7, on the other hand, simply walked through. Why are we just walking around like this? Naruto complained as he and his team continued their light walking pace through the forest of death. We've been walking for over an hour, and we haven't come across a single team. What the heck are we waiting for? While he accepted the fact that he may have to kill during the exam, it didn't mean the young blonde was in any hurry to do so. If anything, Naruto wanted to find a heaven scroll and get to the tower fast before something bad happened. Something in this force just didn't feel something in this force just didn't feel right to him. Would you stop complaining already, Naruto? Sakura replied in an annoyed tone. Sasuke-kun already explained it to you. We're moving like this so we don't get caught off guard by any traps in the trees. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the pink-haired girl, but said nothing. Telling them about his feeling wouldn't do any good. It probably just provoked them into going slower, or could call out the threat for a fight. So instead, the blonde turned his sentences outwards and tried to be ready for any sense of ambush. It paid off. After another half hour of walking, Naruto's nose picked up the scent of something foreign. They were being watched. It was a far cry from any of the scents his fellow Leaf Ninja carried. He'd been around them all along. He'd been around them all long enough to know, and it didn't match anything he'd smelled in the forest so far. This led to this led the blonde to believe that it was an enemy ninja. Using a technique they'd been taught in the academy, Naruto channeled his chakra to his ears and increased his hearing. His nose has always been a little more sensitive than most people's, and his ears were sharp from his days of playing pranks. But he was no Inuzuka. He needed the boost. With the increase in hearing, Naruto managed to hear the enemy's breathing. It was unusual. He must have some sort of mouthpiece on. His breaths are all followed by a strange static-like noise. I'm lucky too. The idiot got close. A little further back and I wouldn't have noticed him. Naruto continued walking behind his fellow members of Team 7, his mind whirling, trying to come up with a way to draw out a stalker and take him out without giving him a chance to escape. He walked for a few more minutes, making sure to keep his senses trained on the enemy ninja, before an idea came to him. But the blonde really wished he could have come up with a better tactic. I have got to start spending more time with Shikamaru. This idea will probably work, but it's way too lame to ever mention later. With his plan set, Naruto called out to his teams. Hey guys, hold up. I gotta go to the bathroom. The two ahead of him looked back, Sasuke with a frustrated scowl and Sakura a grossed out look. What? What the? Are you serious, Naruto Baka? Why didn't you go before you left home? Hey! The blonde cried indignantly. It's not my fault, okay? How was I supposed to know to be doing survival exercise for the second exam? Well, still... Sakura, enough. Sasuke interrupted. The longer you argue with the idiot, the more time you waste. Just let him go. The Uchiha stepped over to one of the nearby trees and sat down, motioning for his blonde teammate to go do his business. Naruto nodded in thanks to his raven-haired teammate before he walked off into the trees on the other side. He made sure to walk a good ways. He made sure to walk a good ways, so as to give the stalker a high sense of security, or stopping and making like he was undoing his belt. The entire time he made his little side journey, the bandaged blonde kept his senses trained on the guy in the trees. He silently patted himself on the back when he noticed the guy was following him. This may just be easier than he thought. It wasn't more than a minute before Naruto heard the guy drop down below. He could feel the cold steel of a kunai pressed against his neck, and then he heard a raspy voice in his ear. Don't you know it's not safe to walk around strange places by yourself? Never know what kind of bad guys are out there, waiting in the shadows. Instead of panicking, Naruto just laughed a little. This seemed to annoy the enemy ninja because he growled, Why are you laughing, punk? Don't you realize this is the end? I'm sorry, it's just, it's gotta be one of the worst lines I've ever heard. And I used to say some pretty lame things, so I know. Well, the ninja replied, I hope it was funny enough, because it's the last thing you'll ever hear. And with that, he whipped his kunai across Naruto's throat and stepped back to watch as the boy fell down into a puddle of blood. Ha! The Amy Genin laughed. I knew that kid was all talk. Oro Oboro didn't have long to gloat though. Faster than he could comprehend, an arm wrapped around his throat and a kunai was shoved through the back of his neck. The move severed his spinal cord, ending his life instantly. Because of this quick death, the young brunette didn't have the chance to see the body at his feet puff away into smoke, revealing itself to be a shadow clone. Behind him, the real Naruto stood with his weapon hilt deep in the boy's neck. Once he was sure he'd done it right, Naruto yanked his knife free and let the Amy Genin's body drop unceremoniously to the ground. With bile rising fast in his throat, the blonde forced himself to look at the dead body. Naruto wanted it to register in his mind that he had done this, and that he'd be doing it again. The Uzumaki boy looked over his first kill. As he hunched over to throw up, Naruto thought about what he'd seen. He saw blood stain the collar of the Amy Genin's jumpsuit, turning the pale yellow a dark muddy crimson. There was a lot less blood than he'd originally expected. He created and switched with a clone while walking towards his designated tree, and then stalked up behind the older-looking boy to make the kill. Must be what makes it such an ideal assassination spot. But this actually helped a little. Naruto had been expecting his first kill to be messy, to be covered in blood, but instead only a small backsplash had cut the knuckles of his killing hand. Looking over the guy again, the bandaged blonde noticed the look in his eyes. Shock. For a single second, the Amy Genin had known Naruto was there, and had been surprised. Now his eyes would forever remain wide and glassy with that look. But the fact that his enemy had known he was there at all made Naruto realize that his silent killing needed work. A lot of work, he thought grudgingly. There was no way it would work on any self-respecting Chunin. Never mind Jonin. Even with the mist, if I don't practice more with my techniques, that'll be an embarrassment to my title. Cleaning off his kunai, Naruto placed it back in its holster with the others, and then knelt down to check if this guy had the scroll. No dice. He must have been sent out as a scout, Naruto mumbled to himself. Either that, or he's impatient and wanted to start picking people off, so he parted from his team. With his skill level, I'd bet even Choji could beat him. Having no luck with finishing up the second exam quickly, Naruto got back to his feet and started making his way back to the others. No point in giving the guy a burial. Not like he'd do the same for me. It didn't take the blonde long to make it back, but once he did, Naruto refrained from telling them about what happened, just motioned that he was ready to go. That's still so gross, Sakura shuddered. Until we find a river or get to the tower, stay away from me. I don't want you touching me with those hands. Well, he didn't stop. Naruto's breath hitched for a moment. What? He looked over at his pink-haired teammate, expecting to see some form of unholy disgust, but instead was met with a face that resembled a girl who thought boys were icky. Oh, that's right. She thinks I used the bathroom. Sakura didn't actually see what I did. With his fears put to rest, Naruto started to turn his attention back to the force around him. But first, the blonde let his gaze linger for a moment and replied, "Sure thing, Sakura. And when we get attacked by an enemy ninja, I'll be sure not to come to save you. You know, with my dirty hands and all." From there, the team was quiet. Although Sakura looked over at the blonde in befuddlement. He wouldn't save her? The same kid who'd swear up and down that he'd do anything for her wouldn't come to her aid if she were in danger? Yeah, right, she thought with a snort. The buck is just probably trying to get my attention, but it won't work. Cha, that little knucklehead! Who does he think he is? Sasuke-kun? If he thinks acting all cool is gonna make us go out with him, he's crazy. Sakura's inner voice agreed. But as they moved farther and farther into the forest, Team 7 was unaware of just what kind of danger awaited them. Outside the testing grounds, seated atop the stands where the teams received their scrolls, Enko Mitarashi was having her lunch. She made a quick dash to her favorite dumpling stand and then returned so as not to miss any of the fun sounds that echoed through the forest of death. Like a team of Genin caught in a trap, she thought with a sadistic smirk. After sliding another dangle off its skewer, the purple-haired Kunoichi went to take a drink from her can, though her mind soon started to drift, its main focus, the Nine-Tails Chinchuriki. She'd really only met him twice, that time in a store, and then again in the library. But she found the blonde to be an interesting character. He'd even managed to keep up with her humor, something that not many people could claim to, could take claim to. One thing's for sure, he's definitely one of the few that will survive this forest. That kid's no ordinary Genin. As she was about to slide the last dumpling off the skewer, Uncle was joined by two Chunin. "What's the matter?" she mumbled through a mouthful of food. "Why are you bothering me?" A lower ranked shinobi, one with glasses and a flak jacket, bowed in response. "We're sorry, Mitsurushi-san, but we've discovered something that we think you should see." And what would that be? It must be pretty important for you to willingly interrupt my lunch." "It is, ma'am," chimed the other tuning. It well, it's a highly unusual case, and we believe you are the best suited to assess the situation. Unusual, huh? Uncle hopped down from her perch, the dongo skewer resting between her teeth. "All right, then," she eyed the two men with curiosity. "Show me what got you guys so nervous." The tr- in a trio of Shunshin, the three ninja were gone. When they stopped, Uncle saw that she'd been taken to a small prayer field. There were small statues of deities circling a stone platform, and on that platform was the reason she'd been called. Three dead bodies. It was obviously a messy ending, as the area was splattered with blood. But what Anko couldn't figure out is who had done it and why. "All right," she turned to the tuning with glasses. "So what do you know about what happened here?" The tuning handed his superior the ninja IDs of the dead shinobi and explained what he knew. "We were patrolling the area as per Lord Hokage's orders when we came across the scene. They were already dead, and we have no clue as to who committed the act. But there is one thing that we couldn't make heads or tails of, and why we came and got you." As she looked through the wallets of the now identified Kusagini, Uncle continued her questioning. "Right, you mentioned something about this particular case being unusual. So what was it?" "They, well, Mitarashi-san, the victims' faces have been torn off." This piece of news immediately got Uncle's attention. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, and her body tensed in fear as an image, a memory, began to play in her mind. No, it can't be. What would he be doing here? Why now? Turning to the Chunin she had spoken with, the special Jonin began to issue orders. I want you to inform Lord Hokage of this immediately. Tell him to send a squad of Anbu units into the Force of Death. He'll understand why. But ma'am, what are you... I'm going in alone, she cut him off. We need to respond quickly if we want any chance of capturing the one who did this. But I can't beat him alone, so I need those Anbu. Unker reached over and grabbed the Chunin by his flak jacket. Which I won't get in time if you sit around here asking stupid questions. Now get going! Stuttering an apology, the Chunin made a hasty exit towards the Hokage's office, leaving Anko alone with his partner. Mitsuhashi-san, I'm new to my rank, so I don't understand all this. What's going on? But the purple-haired Kuruichi didn't respond. She reached up to cup her neck, eyes burning with rage, and then she was gone. You, what could you possibly be doing here after all these years? While the special Jonin rushed in to combat a dangerous threat to the village, Naruto was busy facing off against enemies of his own. He and his team had made it another half a mile when they were attacked, this time by a full team, and out in the open. It was a Genin squad from Suna this time. I'm just glad it wasn't Gaara's team. This one was an all-male squad. Each one wore sleeveless muscle shirts of different colors and white pants that were taped at the ankles. One in particular caught Uzumaki's attention. The guy stood at an average height and had a head of dirty blonde hair, but it was the weapon he wielded that got Naruto's attention. He had a large club gripped in his hand, and it wasn't so big that it looked odd in the older boy's hands, but the bandaged blonde could tell that it was heavy, by the way the Sunagenin's arms was tensed. There was also spikes protruding from various spots around the hunk of metal. Well, 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 what have we here? The club wielder jibed. Looks like we found three little leaf rodents to kill, right, guys? You bet, Renmaru, laughed Asuna Genin with raven black hair and shades. It's too bad for them, agreed the final member of the squad. He had green hair and a pale complexion. They just look like a bunch of greenhorns, and already they're gonna die. The two on the edge broke out into annoying choruses of laughter, but as Naruto tensed his muscles, the club wielder looked his way, and the older boy's eyes hardened. Quiet! Both Tsunagenin stopped laughing immediately. So I was right, the blonde confirmed. He is the leader. But before Naruto could think of how to respond to the situation, Sasuke beat him to it. Before this goes any further, why don't you tell us what scroll you have? A cocky smirk etched its way onto Uchiha's face as he continued speaking. I'd rather not waste time beating you guys to a pulp if it's not going to get me what I want. Naruto resisted the urge to strangle his teammate. What was he doing? Ranmaru, the Genin that Naruto kept his eyes on, pulled his team's scroll from his supply pouch. It was a heaven scroll, the one that Team 7 needed to pass, which means they had the scroll the Suna team needed too. A fight was unavoidable. Sasuke realized this too, although he looked at it as an opportunity to beat down a team of orange ninja and showcase his Uchiha power. Well now, that's too bad for you. That's too bad for the three of you, because you see, that's the scroll we need. And now I know which one of you has it. Sasuke vanished. Or at least, that's what it looked like to Sakura and the Tsunagenin. But to Naruto and Renmaru, the Uchiha may as well have been jogging. When Sasuke reappeared above him, Renmaru was more than ready. The Tsunagenin jumped back and easily avoided the raven-haired boy's aerial attack. But it seemed Sasuke would not be outdone, as he immediately rushed forward and attempted to connect with the combo of his punches. Ranmaru ducked and weaved around each of the blows that his opponent threw at him. After ducking under one right hook in particular, though, the older boy decided to throw up his hands, catch the roundhouse that came from behind him. Behind it. From there, he simply shoved the raven-haired kid to the ground. Sasuke managed to catch himself with the palms of his hands and flipped back towards his team. The guy hadn't even been trying, and he'd avoid every strike. How could that be? But before Sasuke could think of a new attack plan, the son again called out to him. Don't bother. It's not you I'm interested in, kid. I want to fight the blonde one. I'd like to know if that sword's just for show, or if he's actually got what it takes to swing it. This angered Uchiha. He was being dismissed for Naruto of all people. It was insulting. This guy just doesn't realize who he's messing with. With that, Sasuke activated his clan dojutsu and sent an. With that, Sasuke activated his clan's dojutsu and sent another snide grin at the club leader. What? Afraid now that I know your moves, I'll pound you with my Sharingan? Ha! Renmaru laughed. Ha! Fancy eyes aren't gonna save you here, kid. Besides, I already told you, you don't interest me. I prefer to fight opponents who wield weapons, not just jutsu. It shows that they have real skill. The dirty blonde looked over at Naruto and offered, So how about it, kid? Naruto's response was to begin to activate his mist. This shocked the three Sunagenin, as well as the remaining members of Team 7. As the surrounding area began to fill the mist, Renmaru called out to the disappearing blonde. What's a leaf ninja doing using a cutie technique? By the time his fellow blonde was done speaking, Naruto had vanished from sight. Not even his own team could see him. Naruto swiftly made his way up into the trees, and from there created two clones. Using hand signals that they practiced over the month before the exams, Naruto instructed his doppelgangers on what to do. This guy was definitely more skilled than that rain ninja, so he needs to be a little more smarter. Down below, Sasuke and Sakura were back to back, cursing their blonde teammate for not letting him in on his plan. How are they supposed to fight in this mist? How did he even manage to do it? And how did he even manage to do it? Sakura wondered wordlessly as she surveyed her surroundings. There was never any immediate water. How had he created the mist? That creep Zabuza used the river, but Naruto just seemed to make it appear out of nowhere. But she didn't get to think about it for too long, because her eyes made out the hazy shape of a person to her left. As they drew closer, she realized it was the green-haired Sunagenin, and it was looking right at her. So Ranmaru was right. You three aren't big on teamwork, it seems. He rushed forward, but instead of locking weapons with Sakura, he ended up clashing with Sasuke. The two had turned, with the pink-haired Kunoichi covering his blind spots. Just because the dope doesn't let us in on his little plan, Sasuke countered, doesn't mean we were never taught how to work together. The Uchiha pushed away his opponent's kunai and threw out a jab. It connected and sent the Sunagenin staggering back. Taking his chance, Sasuke reached back to wrap an arm around Sakura's waist, then leapt away back into the mist. While Sasuke and Sakura dealt with his teammates, Renmaru was busy keeping up his guard in preparation for the third member of Team 7's opening attack. You know, he gloated, here I thought you were different, but it turns out you're just like all the other wannabe losers that make up the ninja world. He was met with silence. And then he was dodging shuriken as they sailed towards him from the right. His eyes scouring the mist, Renmaru called out again. What kind of attack was that, huh? All this hiding, and for what? Eventually you have to face me like a man. The dirty blonde heard the shifting of the ground behind him, and whirled around to attack his opponent with his club. Ha! Got you! Spiked steel cut through air as Naruto ducked under the swing. The bandaged blonde pulled Kubikiribocho from its place on his back and gave his own mighty swing. However, using only one arm, the blade cleaved too slow, and Renmaru managed to avoid serious injury, escaping with only a slight gash across his chest. As Renmaru regained his footing and readied himself for another attack, he was forced to stop and block an aerial strike from above. Throwing up his club, the Tsunagani managed to stop a second Naruto from hacking off his arm, but this left him open to the blonde that stood in front of him. However, instead of running him through, the Naruto instead of running him through, that Naruto used his sword as a springboard and planted his feet dead center into Renmaru's unguarded chest. This sent the dirty blonde sailing back, but he managed not to topple to the ground. This kid, he's something else. He's figured out how to make solid clones. But did he just copy Kiri's water clone jutsu? Or is this something else? Well, no point in making it too easy for him. With that, Renmaru began to concentrate his chakra, molding it so as to have enough. Then he buried his club into the ground and began a series of hand slams before finally stopping and calling out his attack. Wind style! Gale force breath! The Tsunagani lifted his head into the air and let out a heavy exhale. His attack rushed out, and Renmaru aimed his head in all directions, the force beginning to dissipate the surrounding mist. Unfortunately, the dirty blonde was still only a genin, and so did not have a very high reserve of chakra. With a minute of using the Sirek ninjutsu, he was at 50% of his max. Knowing that any further use of the technique would hinder his fighting ability, Renmaru capped off his technique. But when he looked around, his temples throbbed with anger. The mist was returning. It's as if I never did the attack. Damn it all! I wasted all that chakra for nothing then. Looking around wildly, Renmaru began to lose his cool. You must think you're real funny, huh, kid? Think you got me beat just because of this little trick? Well, think again. I'm one of the best getting that my village has to offer, and there's no way I'm going to lose to a snot-nosed little punk like you. When his rant was only met with more silence, the furious Suna ninja wrenched his club from out of the ground and began to swing wildly. Roar! Come out and fight me like a man! What kind of weakling hides in the face of a fight? You call yourself a warrior? This time, the oldest boy's angry words were met with a response. Laughter. Laughter rang out all around him. But it wasn't the kind of laughter one would give off from a funny joke. No, this one was of mockery. As if the person watching thought Renmaru was just a big, dumb idiot. It drove the sand getting wild. Where are you? The rest of the rant went unspoken, Renmaru's head having been cleaved from his shoulders. Once the Sona shinobi was silent, the mist began to evaporate, and the forest area became clear again. And as the air cleared, it revealed the headless body of Renmaru, with his head sitting a few feet away, and Naruto walking over so as to retrieve his thrown weapon. The blonde pulled Kubikiribocho from its earthly sheath and replaced it along his back. Finally, he looked down at the second body he dropped that day and answered, I'm right here. A rustling in the bushes drew the Uzumaki's attention, and he swiftly placed a hand on his sword handle and glared as he watched his teammates step out of them. Stop! Before you come any closer, prove that you're not an enemy using a hench. And how do you want us to do that? Sasuke questioned. Tell me something only you guys could. A memory from the academy. Sasuke made a disgusted face as he answered. You got in my face the day we were assigned teams, and some idiot knocked into you. So we kissed. Naruto developed a tick, but nodded in acceptance. Then, turning toward Sakura, he motioned for her to reveal her memory. You chose Sasuke to be your very first sparring partner, and lost. in 5 seconds. The smug tone she used to relay the account irked Naruto, but instead of flying off the handle, he just scoffed. And yet I'm the one who defeated Renmaru. Funny how that works. This drew the teammates' eyes to the body on the ground. Sakura paled while Sasuke simply wrinkled his nose. But Naruto could see the anger in his eyes too. He could see the jealousy. Sakura quickly turned her emerald eyes away from the grizzly's sight and sent them narrowing it to her teammate. What in the world, Naruto Baka? You couldn't beat him, so you had to kill him? Blue eyes narrowed in annoyance as the accused blonde replied, Sakura, what's your problem? We're a ninja. Killing is in the job description, remember? If I hadn't killed him, it would just become a threat later on down the road, or kill me right now. I don't know about you, but I prefer living over having my brain sprout across the ground any day. But Sakura wasn't convinced. Yeah, well, Sasuke can beat both of the other Tsunagen, without killing them. So why couldn't you? This brought Naruto's attention to Sasuke's less than sparkling appearance, and the blonde could only snort mockingly as he looked upon the elite Uchiha. Sasuke was dirty, and his shirt had multiple tears in it from barely avoiding attacks, mostly from being his blind spot. Looks like the Sharingan needs to take a lesson from the Byakugan about being able to see 360 degrees. Sakura, why are you so worried about what I'm doing? Why don't you just keep your head focused on what's really important? Like passing the exams instead of questioning my methods. As he spoke, Naruto moved over to Renmaru's dead body and began rummaging through the pouch he'd seen the older boy place a scroll in. Sure enough, Naruto came away with a heaven scroll and a few weapons to replace the ones he's thrown. Turning to look at his team, Naruto proposed that they make their way to the tower. I'm starting to get a little hungry. Begrudgingly, the other members of Squad 7 began to follow the blonde's lead as he began to walk off. Unfortunately, none of them noticed a pair of eyes that gazed down hungrily upon them. Soon, Sasuke Uchiha, soon those wonderful eyes of yours are going to be mine. The first night had fallen in the forest of death. For some teams, like Konoha Squads 8 and 9, it wasn't a problem because they had the Byakugan to pierce the black. But for others, like Naruto's, it meant they had to hunker down and wait out the darkness. But at least we have both scrolls already, Sakura confirmed as she settled down on her bench next to Sasuke. So tomorrow we can just head straight for the tower. Naruto, who sat a tree away, growled a little as his teammates' carelessness. Great, Sakura. Just go right ahead and paint a big red target on the team's back. For a moment, it looked like Sakura was going to argue, but Sasuke didn't feel like listening to them, so he spoke up instead. Sakura, as much as I hate saying this, the dog is right. You shouldn't just say that out loud. It could draw unneeded attention. Funny, Naruto scoffed. In here I thought you'd be itching for a fight. What happened? Renmaru take all the wind out of your sails? His teammate's jab caused Sasuke to tense in anger. No, I just don't feel like taking any dumb risks. Besides, Sasuke turned his head in a dismissive manner. You saw how that weakling chickened out after seeing my Sharingan. Yeah, sure. Naruto resisted the urge to roll his eyes, instead choosing to scoff again. Yeah, right. Naruto, leave Sasuke-kun alone, Sakura butted in. He's had a hard day. In fact, we all have. So do us a favor and don't start anything. The blonde's reaction was the one that the Hanaro girl never would have expected. He glared at her. Naruto's eyes turned a dark cobalt blue as he replied to her reprimanding. You're one to talk, Sakura. You endanger the team by not thinking before you speak, but somehow I'm the one who needs to watch what I say? Look, just because I used to like you, don't think I'm going to keep putting up with your attitude. Those days are over. And with that, Naruto rested his head against his tree and closed his eyes. As the trio of Genin rested from their long day, somewhere a few miles away from him, Anko was kicking herself in frustration. The special Jonin had spent hours searching for the faces she'd seen on those Kusa ID cards, only to turn up empty-handed. Damn it all! If I don't find him soon, there's no telling what he might do. What a fine time for the law to kick in. Anko's request for backup in the form of an Ambu detail had been denied. Since there was no hard proof that there was a rogue ninja inside the forest, the Hokage was barred from sending any in, for fear it was a ruse just to pick off an other village's genin. So much for trust and friendship between nations, she muttered while looking out into the dense woods. I can't very well keep going on my own right now. Even I don't want to try and deal with the monsters in those shadows. So instead, the purple-haired Kunoichi knelt down and let some of the tension ease from her body, making sure not to completely let her guard down. It's going to be a long night. When he opened his eyes again, Naruto wasn't greeted by the light of the sun, but by the sight of his own male teammate's face. What is it? You and I need to talk. Naruto's brow arched in confusion. About what? About Sakura and our team. The Uchiha looked over at the pink-haired girl in question. But I don't want to wake up and overhear what we say, so we're gonna have to move away. That last bit caught the blonde's attention. But if we do that, Sakura will be a sitting duck, Sasuke. Even you aren't that heartless. Sasuke's face contorted into a frustrated look of thought. He stayed that way for a moment before voicing an idea. What if you leave a clone? That way, if anything happens, one of them can come and find us. It won't be very far. Naruto stared at the raven-haired youth in front of him. His eyes bored into the onyx black pair that stared back at him for what felt like hours, before finally Naruto relented. All right, but only far enough so that she can't hear us. After making the clones, Naruto set off with his teammate, began moving away from Sakura. As promised, they didn't go very far, and soon were standing along a branch far enough away that there wasn't any chance of being heard. But Naruto quickly noticed he couldn't see Sakura either. He may not have feelings for her anymore, but she was still his teammate, and he would prefer her not dying before they passed the second exam. Looking at Sasuke, the blonde asked, Alright, we moved away. Now what did you want to say, Sasuke? What do you think about having Sakura removed from the team? Blue eyes widened as Naruto's bandaged mouth dropped open a little. What did you just say? Sasuke crossed his arms over his chest and elaborated. Think about it. She's nothing but dead weight. When I was fighting those two Suna Genin, all Sakura did was stand there. And you saw how she acted to you, Ken and Renmaru. I can't have a teammate that doesn't know how to be a shinobi, Naruto. So you want to have her pulled from Team 7? Naruto finished. And what do you think? And what do you think will happen to us, Tem? The Hokage's not just going to send a three-man squad out into the field. We'll have to wait for a replacement. Besides, knowing the old man, he won't do it. He'll just tell us to help her get stronger. The Uchiha's face set into an annoyed look. The waiting would be worth it. Just get that weakling off our team. Besides, I'm sure your grandfather would be more than willing to let us be a three-man team, considering how strong the both of us are. When Sasuke turned his eyes back to Naruto, he saw a look of smug satisfaction on the blonde's face. What? He asked carefully. Why are you looking at me like that? You know it's true. Naruto crossed his arms over his own chest and explained. You know, at first you almost had me. You look just like him, and even have all your holsters and pouches on the right way. But you tripped up with your speech. Sasuke would have immediately referred to him as a dub after I called him a Tim. Besides, the real Sasuke knows that the Hokage isn't actually my grandfather. I just call him old man because, well, he's old. Oh, and Sasuke would rather cut his tongue out than admit that I'm strong. The now revealed impostor narrowed their eyes and settled into a defensive stance. With a cruel smirk, he gave up the charade. Well, well, aren't you the observant one? It's too bad, though. If you had just let me stall you until my master was finished, you would have been spared. But now I'm going to have to kill you. Naruto's smug look melted away, but instead of fear or surprise, it shaped into one of curiosity. Oh, he wondered. Well, that would be an interesting sight to see. A dead man fighting. Sasuke's lookalike arched his brow in confusion. Had this kid lost his mind? But before he could say anything, a weight dropped down on him and slammed him into the ground. Arrgh! A pair of kunai had been thrust into his shoulders. Struggling under the weight of a clone, the imposter's hand just dropped away, revealing a rather rotund teen wearing a straw hat and purple robes. Looking up, he asked in a nasally voice when Naruto had set up a shadow clone. Simple, when you were leading me away. With your back to me, you didn't see me scratch my face. It's a sign my clones and I decided would mean follow. Naruto chuckled mockingly. Do you really think I'd just walk off with you without being tailed? The impostor growled menacingly in his throat, not liking being made a fool of, but then laughed at himself before he bragged. And yet you still lose. My master has more than likely already achieved what he's come to do. So my time is not wasted, which means me and I get the last laugh. From there he broke out into a wild, mocking fit of laughter, only to be silenced a moment later when Naruto's clone pulled out another kunai and jabbed it into the back of his neck. The impostor was instantly silenced. You know, the doppelganger said as it stood up, there is more than one way to kill a person. By Zabuza's knowledge, there are 8. Naruto eyed his clone. I know, but I'd rather not have to add to. But I know, but I'd rather not have to listen as he choked on his own blood. He was a pawn in someone else's game, not really a position befitting a ruthless demon. But what he said, I should get back to the others. With a nod, the glow dispelled in a puff of smoke, sending the chakra back to its creator, who then proceeded to rush back the way he came. I got a bad feeling about this. Naruto, your inner Jedi is showing. That bad feeling turned out to be well founded, because once the blonde returned to where he and his team had settled down, he immediately noticed one bad thing. There was nobody there. Sasuke and Sakura were gone, and it didn't look like anyone had even. Wait, what was that? Naruto knelt down on the branch that Sasuke had picked to sleep on, squinted his ocean blue eyes, and saw something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Blood. There was a puddle of it oozing along the bark of the log. Shit! Chances are that's Sasuke's blood. Problem is, I don't know which way they even went. Staring back down at the blood, Naruto got an idea. But maybe. Better? The blonde focused his chakra and sent it to his nose. His sense of smell skyrocketed, and he could pick up the scent of the blood in it from him as well as a faint trail that led off to the left. Snapping his head in that direction, Naruto quickly shot off from the branch and raced after his teammates. Just because he didn't like them didn't mean he was willing to fail the exams by letting them die. Sasuke felt as if his heart was going to explode out of his chest, and his lungs burned from the heat of his latest great fireball jutsu. The opponent in front of him was unlike anything he ever faced before. The Uchiha didn't think even Rock Lee would stand a chance. Just who the hell is this lady? What does she want from us? So far, the raven-haired clan heir hadn't activated his Sharingan, but Sasuke was beginning to think that if he didn't do it soon, then the fight wouldn't last much longer. The woman appeared out of nowhere during Sakura's watch. Naruto had disappeared, and the pink-haired girl had been placed under a genjutsu. Sasuke was awakened by the immense evil that permitted the air as the Kusa Kunoichi stepped out from behind a tree. Sasuke had immediately woken Sakura from her forced slumber and asked about Naruto. Your little friend is far too powerful for his rank, she replied in a slick, oily tone. And I didn't feel like trying to avoid him while having my fun with you, Sasuke Uchiha. From there, it was a blur to the frightened remains of Squad 7. The lanky woman just looked at them, and Sasuke and Sakura were unable to move. It felt as if their entire bodies had been weighed down with lead, but that wasn't the worst of it. As they peered into the Kusa Kunoichi's eyes, both getting to witness their own gruesome demise at the evil woman's hands. It was bloody. It was sick. It was terrifying. Sakura, unable to handle such a grisly image, bent over and retched. As she emptied her stomach of its contents, Sasuke also noticed that she was shaken, convulsion out of sheer horror at the thought of dying in such a way. Sasuke had turned his eyes away from her when he noticed the woman begin to walk towards them, an air of pure death seeming to radiate from her very being. The Uchiha Avenger grit his teeth until they arched and finally managed to force himself to move, if only a little, so as to pull a kunai from his holster. After that, Sasuke plunged the blade into his own flesh, and with the genjutsu's hold broken, rushed off with Sakura clenched in his arms. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to get very far, and Sasuke was forced to do battle with the creepy Kunoichi. That's when he learned how much trouble he was truly in. I haven't been able to land a solid blow since we started, he seethed while keeping his eyes on the Kusa woman. She's so fast, and this wound in my leg isn't helping me keep up with her. Suddenly, a dark laughter filled the air, drawing Sasuke away from his thoughts and back to the battle. The Kusa Kunoichi was eyeing him with a predatory gleam in her soulless black eyes. Now, Sasuke, do you really think it's a good idea to let yourself be distracted by your thoughts? In fact, the only thought that should be on your mind is surviving. Because I'm done warming up. That was just a warm up? That was the only thought Sasuke managed to get out before he was kneed in the stomach. His opponent had just gone faster. Sasuke was knocked off the tree he'd been perched on and sent sailing through the air. Years of training kicked in, though, and the Uchiha managed to right himself in midair and land safely on another branch. As he looked up from his lower position, the boy's eyes glowed red, this time with two tomoe in each eye. This seemed to excite his opponent. Ah, yes, the Sharingan. I was wondering when I get to see it, and it looks like I've pushed you just far enough to unlock the next level. Perhaps you could thank me by giving me a more entertaining fight. When the message of death rushed him, when the message when the messenger of death rushed him this time, Sasuke realized that he was finally able to see her movements. Unlike during his fight with Lee, the Uchiha's vision wasn't hazy, seeing only blurred images as the person moved. No, this time Sasuke was able to see a clear, slow pictures of his opponent's movements. And if he could see it, he could block it. This time, when the Kunoichi landed a haymaker, Sasuke threw up his arm to block and their limbs collided. Sasuke saw the look of shock in the older Genin's eyes and took the opening for all it was worth. As he started pushing his opponent's arm aside and then retaliating with a right hook, once it connected, the Uchiha heir drove his other fist deep into the Kunoichi's stomach before gripping both hands behind her head and bringing his knee up to smash against her face. But he wasn't done yet. As her head snapped up from his last blow, Sasuke used his momentum to lift himself into the air and slam his feet into the woman's chest, sending her rocking back into a tree. Not taking any chances, Sasuke pulled two kunai from their holster and sent them sailing towards the raven-haired woman. They trapped her hands against the trunk of the tree with a squelching thunk. As the Kunoichi wailed in pain, Sasuke flashed through a set of hand signs before calling out his strongest style technique. Fire style! Fire style! Dragon Flame Jutsu! An orange dragon made of flames burst forth from the young Uchiha's mouth and soared through the air towards the boy's pinned opponent. In a fiery explosion, the dragon ran right against the tree's trunk, its remains licking away at the thick wood. Sakura, who had been recovered from her horrible experience, cheered for the Raven-Hair's apparent victory. Yeah, way to go, Sasuke-kun! You did it! For a brief moment, Sasuke actually believed her, as though Jutsu was unable to see any traces of his opponent in the fire. But then he heard that laughter again. Only this time, he couldn't tell where it was coming from. Oh, God. All he's done is destroy one of my mud clones. Although with how much power I gave it, it is a bit of a surprise young Sasuke managed to come out on top. But let's see how he handles the real thing. Fast as lightning, a streak bolted down from a tree over towards Sasuke. But thanks to his eyes, Uchiha Air was able to see the attack coming and avoided it. As he leapt to the side, Sasuke quickly threw his arms up in a crossguard to absorb the snap kick that followed. Sasuke let himself be taken by gravity and began to fall. As he passed a particular branch, though, the Genin pulled out his ninja war and used it to swing himself to a different landing spot. Unfortunately, this caused him to lose sight of the Kusa Kunoichi. Looking for someone? Sasuke whirled around, but was too slow to avoid the Spartan kick that found its way to his chest. Managing to keep himself upright, Sasuke barely avoided the series of punches that followed the kick, before spinning on his heel and landing an elbow against the woman's back. The woman quickly followed this with a palm strike that sent his opponent staggering forward. However, before he could capitalize on the Kunoichi's lack of balance, Sasuke was caught by a donkey kick to the stomach, which sent him tumbling backwards. The Kusa woman finally regained her balance and turned her attention on the now down Sasuke. Stalking over to him, she made a noise of disappointment, like a mother scolding her child. A true Uchiha would have been able to block that. Looks like I overestimated you, Sasuke. You're nothing like Itachi. Sasuke's eyes snapped open. They filled with rage at the sound of his older brother's name, and how he was being considered insignificant to him again. I think I'll do your ancestors a favor and just end your pathetic life right here. That way you won't be able to shame. That way you won't bring any more shame to that crest on your. Arrgh! Her condemnation of Sasuke was cut short as a series of miniature paper bombs attached to her back exploded. As the woman was launched forward by the explosion, Sasuke took that opportunity to push himself to his feet and ram his fist into her gut. From there, he flipped over her hunched form, placed the kunoichi in a hold, and let himself be torpedoed towards the ground by gravity. Uchiha Clan's secret technique, Falcon Drop. A resounding crack echoed through the dense forest as the Kusa woman's head hit the ground. Sasuke pulled himself away and stepped back, but kept his eyes on the body in front of him. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. That proved to be a smart decision, because the body shook before melting into mud. Searching the trees, Sasuke called out to his opponent. For all your talk, you seem to be nothing but a one-trick pony. What happened to letting me fight the real thing? Since this fight started, you've been using nothing but mud clones. What's the matter? Too afraid to fight me yourself? What happened next was beyond anything Sasuke had expected. An enormous pressure seemed to suddenly bear down on him. It far outclassed the earlier feeling he felt he had. It had far. It far outclassed the earlier feeling he'd had when first confronted by the Kusa woman. It was so bad, Sasuke was brought to his knees, then forced to keep himself up with his hands. The pure malice seemed to seep into the air, threatening to choke the very life from Sasuke as he struggled to breathe. His limbs shook violently until they could no longer support the weight of the woman's power, and Sasuke was soon face down in the dirt. Motion to his right caught the young Sharingan user's attention, and with tremendous effort he managed to peer over and take a look. It was her. She was walking over completely unharmed, as if the past half hour hadn't just happened. The Kusa Kunoichi had a superior smirk on her face, too, as if Sasuke were nothing more but a bug to be squashed. This power that you're feeling, it's only 10% of what I'm truly capable of. What you've been fighting, those clones, they're only 1% of my true strength. You never really stood a chance. Sasuke's crimson eyes widened in disbelief. 1%? No way! There's just no way! This woman, she can't be a Genin. Not with a power this evil. It's just not possible. The Kusa Kunoichi saw the realization in her opponent's eyes and laughed. That's right. I'm not really a Genin, Sasuke Uchiha. No, I am someone who even the Kages fear. A shinobi of such power that even your village's copying ninja pales in comparison. I am Orochimaru, and I've come all this way just to see you, Sasuke, to test your abilities. And I must say, I'm sorely disappointed. Sasuke gritted his teeth and tried to push himself onto his hands, but the immense pressure that the now identified Orochimaru's power gave off was just too much. He couldn't even twitch his fingers. And this is only 10%? Orochimaru watched as his prey struggled, the Kunoichi's face still hiding him like a mask. Oh, don't bother trying to fight it, Sasuke. You aren't anywhere near the level required to stave off my power's immense physical presence. But then, that's why I'm here, to give you that boost you need in order to start down the proper path. The path to a power greater than even your brother's. Onyx black eyes stared down at the pinned youth, and then, with a breath, all the pressure that had been weighing Sasuke down disappeared. That power you just witnessed can be yours, Sasuke, if you want it. Down on the ground, Sasuke took slow, shuddering breaths as he recovered from the latest ordeal. His ears were filled with the sound of his own heartbeat as it thundered within the contours of his chest. So, it took the young Uchiha a moment for Orochimaru's words truly made contact. The power to kill Itachi? But before Sasuke could even utter a sound, a kunai sailed through the air and landed between him and the disguised shinobi that stood over him. Both males turned their eyes in the direction that it had come from and were greeted by the sight of Sakura. I don't know who you think you are, but stay away from Sasuke-kun! Orochimaru looked on from beneath his disguise and studying this new development with disinterest. Sakura was poised in the basic defensive stance, feet shoulder width apart and a kunai clenched in both hands. And despite her attempt to look threatening, the older shinobi could clearly see the fear coming off her in waves, not to mention her trembling body. Is this what passes for a kunoichi of the leaf now? The false female questioned. Your power is pitiful. Nothing like my old apprentice. Sakura, having not heard Orochimaru's revealing of his identity, looked on her in confusion. How could a Genin have an apprentice? Orochimaru saw this and chuckled. Only this time it was different from the sound members of Squad 7 had heard before. This laugh was not that of a woman, but of a man. Foolish girl. You have absolutely no idea just who it is you're dealing with. As he spoke, the disguised shinobi reached up and gripped his face before peeling it away. The sound of tearing flesh echoed through the otherwise quiet forest area. Then, as soon as it began, it was over. What was revealed made Sakura's trembling hands drop her kunai, and the girl herself dropped to her knees. Gone was the face of a Kusa Kunoichi. In its place, the face of a man with a pasty white complexion. No longer were there soulless onyx black eyes, but horrible yellow eyes reminiscent of a snake, the eyes of a killer. To Sakura, it's the face she'd seen during her intensive studies, the face that nightmares were made of. Orochimaru of the Sanin. Sakura stared open-mouthed at the trembling. Sakura stared open-mouthed and trembling at the legendary shinobi that stood before her. The pink-haired girl had learned of all the greats that had come out of her village, and among them, Orochimaru stood out in a class of his own. The man seemed to be the very personification of malevolent power, and he was walking towards her. It's sad, really, that this is what's become of my old home's Kunoichi standard. You're barely more than a civilian. The pink-haired girl can do nothing as the Sani moves closer and closer, until finally coming within inches of her kneeling form. Her trembling turned violent, and she choked on her own breath as the rogue ninja reached out and gripped her hair. With a gasp, Sakura's emerald green eyes looked past the legs that stood before her and over towards Sasuke. He was sitting on his hands and knees now, staring blankly at the ground. Sasuke-kun, help me, please! A laugh, cruel and dark, was what greeted the terrified young girl's ears. Against her better judgment, Sakura forced her eyes to search out for the source and gazed up at the man who still had hold of her pink strands. The malicious yellow eyes peered down at her, pinning Sakura to a single spot, and a mocking smirk was etched on their owner's face. Foolish girl! Sasuke's in no position to save anyone. He can't even save himself. But don't worry. Your death doesn't interest me in any way. He saw the hope in her eyes and decided to crush it. However, I will have to teach you a lesson in manners. It's very rude to interrupt someone's conversation. What little hope there was when Sakura's eyes flickered out like a candle, and was replaced by a look of pain as her hair was pulled. The young Kunoichi's body was lifted up off the dirt, and then knocked back into the tree by a fist to the stomach. Orochimaru once again began to move, and this time Sakura started to cry. It was only seconds after a run-in with the tree that Sakura felt a sandal press down on her head and shoved her face into the dirt. Her tears began to flow faster, and the terrified young Genin couldn't hold back her sobs of fear. The Sanin that had her pinned down looked at his prey in a mixture of amusement and disgust. Even Uncle hadn't cried the day he revealed his dark nature. This girl was just pathetic. As a shinobi, it disgusts me that someone like you wears a headband, and has the audacity to call yourself a ninja. You are a disgrace. To emphasize his point, Orochimaru reared his head back and then planted a kick right into Sakura's forehead. The sniveling Kunoichi's body snapped up and back, doing a complete flip before being caught by the neck. Green met yellow as Sakura stared into the eyes of her tormentor. I think I've changed my mind, Orochimaru amended as he pulled a kunai from his holster. You're too much of a stain on the title of shinobi to be allowed to live. But just as the villainous Sanin angled his weapon for the kill, a heavy mist began to permeate the night air. Dropping the weak Kunoichi to the ground, Orochimaru laughed delightedly at this turn of events. You're much more clever than I gave you credit for, boy. Now let us see if you can provide me with some entertainment. You're much more clever than I gave you credit for, boy. Now, let's see if you can provide me with some entertainment. All was silent for a moment, and the raven-haired man almost thought his opponent had used the mist as a cover to rescue his teammates. But then he looked down and saw that the girl was still at his feet. Narrowing his eyes in annoyance, the older man called out, or perhaps you're stuck trembling in fear like your weak little friend. More silence. And then 8 points. It echoed throughout the entirety of the mist. The voice seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. Impossible to pinpoint. Larynx, spine, liver, lungs, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Orochimaru stepped away from the pink-haired girl at his feet and began to traverse the mist. All points that, if struck, cause a fatal wound. Very good. But what will that knowledge do for you if you can't hit your target? I'm not like those other two. The voice echoed through the dense fog. So you say, the son ingests. But you have yet to prove yourself more than just a frightened mouse hiding away in his little hole. A faint, almost imperceptible whirling was Orochimaru's only warning to the oncoming first strike. But it was enough. As soon as the long-haired shinobi held out his hand and caught the blade that came spinning towards him with an intent to lop off his head. Please, not this trick again. I've watched your fight with Red Maru, boy, so you'll have to do better than that. I did. In a puff of smoke, the Kubikiribocho Orochimaru was holding disappeared, and it was replaced by Naruto. He used his free arm to swing his sword in an upward arc. He was rewarded with a splash of blood as his head cleaver sliced through flesh. Arrgh! Orochimaru stumbled back. His years of experience and superior skill allowed him to escape with only a slight gash. Damn it! How could I let that happen? Looking up from his wound, the sun and snake-like eyes found no trace of the blond swordsman. He escaped back into the mist. You'd better have enjoyed that lucky shot, he called out to the hazy wood, because it's the only one you'll get. A sound from above allowed the legendary shinobi to be ready for an axe kick that came down on him. Orochimaru threw up one arm to block it, then used the other to grab Naruto's leg and slammed him to the ground, only for him to erupt into smoke. The assault didn't stop there. Shuffling off the ground behind him alerted Orochimaru of an attempt at his blind spot. The older male used his advanced speed to easily move out of the way and over towards a paper bomb. An explosion of fire and smoke sent the Sanin staggering back, unready for the sweep kick that came from behind and knocked his feet out from under him. But he did manage to catch himself in the air and then spin kick into an axe kick of his own, which he slammed down hard on his blonde opponent's head. He was rewarded with another clone. Standing at his full height, Orochimaru reprimanded himself for being so careless. It should have been obvious that the attack on his blind spot was a ruse. The boy had used it as a diversion to set the paper bomb. This little brat. He's a crafty one, I'll give him that. But let's see how he does out in the open, without his mist to protect him. With that thought in mind, Orochimaru gathered his chakra, then sent out a purple wave, and sent it out in a purple wave. The mist was blown away, and the forest became clear again. Looking around, the Saiyan immediately noticed something. His original target was gone. The blonde had distracted Orochimaru long enough so that his clone could get Sasuke and his other teammate away from the battlefield. The legendary shinobi was angry, and yet he also found himself amused. He hadn't gotten a good hunt out of Sasuke. This kid was turning out to be more interesting than he first thought. The pale rogue chuckled darkly to himself before leaping into the trees. The hunt was on. It didn't take him long to find them. With his speed, there wasn't any possibility of them escaping. And Orochimaru soon came up upon the tree of Genin hiding in a brush of a tree, or at least what looks like a squad of brats. The Sanin pulled out more kunai from his stolen hoista and chucked them at the younger ninja. Sure enough, they exploded in a powerful combination of clone smoke and paper bombs. The kid was definitely creative, that's for sure. Now, now then, he mused as his yellow eyes looked around. That means he's nearby. No doubt the boy was hoping to use the explosion as an opening to attack. And sure enough, up in the trees that overlooked his position, Naruto sat with his teammates. I should have known he wouldn't fall for that again, Naruto growled low to himself. It had been a bit of a desperate move on his part, but the blonde figured it never hurt to try. Looking over at his team, though, the bandage Genny knew he had to do something soon, or risk failing the exam. Sasuke was sure in a Sasuke was still in a catatonic state, staring at nothing, and Sakura wouldn't stop trembling. Things weren't looking good. Hey, Tim! Wake up already! Naruto tried goading his raven-haired teammate into action. Come on, you idiot! I don't want to fight this guy myself. He managed to blow away my whole mist, and he's acting like this chocolate drink didn't even faze him. Wait, how do I know that? My clones were the only ones there after I picked up these two. So why do I remember him dispersing my mist and destroying my clones? Unfortunately, the curious blonde didn't get any more time to think about the strange memories, because his ears were soon greeted by the frightening sound of the snake sounding's voice. Found you! Blue eyes swiveled to search out where the voice came from and nearly popped out of their owner's skull at what they saw. Orochimaru lying atop a giant snake. What in the world? The pale-faced shinobi laughed at his prey's fear. Do you think you're the only one in the world who has mastered the clone jutsu, boy? As my creator sped off to find you, he created me to help him search. And now that I've found you, playtime is over. Came the second voice, only from the opposite. Came the same voice, only from the opposite side. Naruto looked to his left and was floored to see another giant snake eyeing him and his team like lunch. I don't get it, Naruto called out in an attempt to stall for time. What is someone like you even doing here? What do you want? The twin Saiyans chuckled as if the blonde had just told a joke. Simple. I'm here for Sasuke. I have a gift I'd like to give him that I think he'll appreciate. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He didn't like Sasuke, but he couldn't very well let a rogue ninja give him whatever this gift was. It may become a problem later. So looking back and forth between the two snakes, Naruto voiced his response. Sorry, but even though I don't much care for the Tem, I can't let that happen. Oy. Orochimaru peered down at the blonde swordsman with humor in his yellow eyes. Then all you do is invite your own death. With that, the two snake summons charged forward, mouths open, ready to take a bite. In response, Naruto created three clones. Two of them locked their blades with the snake's fangs, and he and the third clone launched themselves at the two Orochimarus. As he moved through the air, Naruto pulled back Kubikiribocho from his back and aligned it for a swing. Once he got close enough, the Nine-Tails Chinchuriki brought the large butcher knife-like blade around in a horizontal slash. When his opponent jumped back to avoid it, though, Naruto let the momentum of the swing take hold and buried his sword into the skull of the snake summon. In a large cloud of smoke, the reptile disappeared, freeing one of Naruto's clones to help him. No! He cried out while keeping his eyes on Orochimaru. Stay there and defend the others. See if you can snap that Tim out of his little pity party. Once his orders were given, the blonde Genin settled into his stance and simply stared at his superior opponent. With the snake gone, the two were once again standing atop the branch of a tree. I must say, you have certainly proved yourself to be far more entertaining than your two teammates. But like I told Sasuke, you haven't even seen a fraction of my true power. And just like that, Naruto was placed under the same pressure that brought Sasuke to his knees earlier that night. What amazed the Sanin was the fact that the blonde was still standing. Yes, his legs shook from their effort, but the blonde managed to remain on his feet. This boy, what is he? Knowing that producing any more pressure would draw the attention of any shinobi beyond the forest area, Orochimaru chose instead to allow his power to recede and settled for drawing his kusanagi from the depths of his throat. You swing that sword with more skill than any genin I've seen. Now let's see how well you fare against the real competition. Orochimaru, almost too fast for Naruto to see, Orochimaru rushed forward. It took all the blown speed to bring up his own blade in time and meet his opponent's longsword in a clash of steel. Then, as quick as a flash, the snake Sanin pulled back and went for a leg sweep. Naruto leapt forward over this, then dug his own sword into the bark of the tree and used it to twist and launch a kick at Orochimaru's face. Orochimaru used his forearm to block the strike and then thrust his own blade at Naruto's chest. Naruto's body was replaced with a hunk of timber when the kusanagi pierced his heart, and the blonde popped up a few feet above the serpent-like Sanin, where he brought down his large sword in an attempt to split Orochimaru down the middle. The sound of steel clashing rang through the forest as cleaver met longsword in a stalemate. Konoha's rogue Sanin heaved his blonde opponent away, but then had to slide away when Naruto stabbed his large blade in an attempt to skewer him. It was when he missed that Naruto surprised his stronger adversary. With strength and speed that outclassed any normal genin, the blonde swung the flat of his executioner's blade and smashed Orochimaru in the back. The blow connected and the pale swordsman was sent rolling back. Naruto attempted to rush forward, but was forced to stop when the older man shot a mouthful of snakes at him. Once again thrusting his sword into the tree, Naruto used it as a stepping stone to jump over the oncoming torrent of reptiles, and used his air time to perform hand signs. Water style, exploding water shockwave! A high-powered jet of water shot out of the blonde Genin's mouth and straight at Orochimaru. And although the man managed to avoid the deadly blast, he watched in amazement as his younger opponent displayed enough power to punch a clean hole through the tree's thick branch. The Sani didn't have long to be impressed, though, because he was soon throwing up his kusanagi in offensive block as Naruto came down with his executioner's blade. Yellow eyes widened further when he saw an air bullet jutsu hurling towards them. As he looked away, Orochimaru looked at where the attack had come from and almost couldn't believe it when he saw a blonde still holding their hands in the tiger sign. He could perform wind and water style techniques? It wasn't often you found a genin who who can manipulate one element, let alone two. And yet, this boy, and yet this boy managed to create one that size. No Ganon should be this advanced. His chakra rivers are far too large for him to be a simple low-level shinobi. The only people this young with reserves like that are... Ah, now it makes sense. Orochimaru stationed himself along the trunk of another tree so as to place distance between himself and the blonde. Looking over the boy and his recovered clone, Asanin called out, "It took me longer to find... Look, it took me longer than I'm proud to admit, but I finally figured it out. Well, you're much more powerful than any normal Genin. You possess the nine-tailed fox." Naruto glared up at the pale-faced shinobi. "And what if I do? I don't suppose that's enough to scare away a guy like you." "Of course not," the rogue ninja replied. "It just makes this all the more interesting, especially since you have yet to even tap into the beast's power." "I'm more interested in where I stand against you by myself right now." Naruto slung Kubikiribocho up and angled it straight at Orochimaru. "We can worry about my furry friend later." And with that, the blonde pushed off the ground and shot toward his opponent, only to use a water shockwave to push himself back and avoid being caught in a hail of snakes. Once back on solid ground, Naruto looked over to where the attack had come from, and not for the first time was unprepared for what he saw. Anko. "I finally found you, Orochimaru Sensei." Blue eyes bugged out at that revelation, and Naruto was silently thankful his bandages hid his open mouth from view. The blonde looked back and forth between the special Jonin and the Sanin, trying his best to take this news in. Unbelievable. Anko turned her pupilless brown eyes to the blonde that stood a few branches below her. The woman's face was set in a stern but curious stare. Had Naruto really just been going up against her old teacher? "Ah, Anko-chan! What a pleasant surprise!" The Sanin's voice cut through her thoughts, turning our attention back to the more important matter at hand. "Although I can't help wondering, just how did you know I was here?" The purple-haired Kunoichi glared at her old Jonin instructor, hatred burning brightly in her eyes. "Easy. You left your mess behind. You were never very good at cleaning up after yourself, Sensei. From there I headed into the forest, and just as I was getting settled in for the night, I sensed you showboating. It was a piece of cake to track you after that." Orochimaru eyed his two opponents. The Kyubi kid by himself wasn't really a problem, but if he were teamed with Anko, he would have to stop playing so much and that risk exposure. Being careless was not an option against a purple-haired woman, not when she knew that jutsu. So instead, he chose the easy way out. "It will also give me time to mark my prize." The legendary shinobi placed his hands in an activation seal, and almost instantly Anko screamed out in pain before dropping to her knees. "Anko?" Naruto cried out before leaping towards the down woman. "Just like I thought," Orochimaru thought before he bolted from his perch. "Sasuke Uchiha is mine now." While the snake Sanin rushed off to complete his goal, Naruto was busy trying to aid the purple-haired woman that had come to his aid just moments before. "Anko, are you all right? What happened?" The woman only moaned in agony while clutching her neck area. Naruto knelt beside her and reached out his hand, placing it over the old woman's. "Anko, I can't do anything if you don't show me what's wrong." Anko managed to pull herself together enough to lament through gritted teeth. "There's nothing you can do, Gaki. There's nothing anyone could do." With that, she pulled her hand away and revealed what had caused her so much pain. A black dot, surrounded by three tomoe. It was a seal. "What is this thing?" The purple-haired Kunoichi's pain seemed to have lessened greatly, because no longer were her eyes filled with physical pain, but instead overflowing with emotional pain. "It's a curse seal. A jutsu developed by that bastard Orochimaru, and a slave collar for anyone who he decides to place it on. Blue eyes widen in realization as their owner recalled something. Something Orochimaru had told him earlier. Something about a gift for Sasuke. Damn it! Pupilless brown eyes peered at the irate blonde. What's wrong? I know what he's doing here. He's going to put that thing on Sasuke. Damn it! Uncle cursed. I should have known. That slithery bastard's always had an unhealthy obsession with jutsu. It makes sense he'd be after the only kid left with eyes that let you copy everything you see. Naruto reached out and placed the older woman's arms over his shoulder. When she tried to pull away, he simply held tight. Uncle, please, let me help you. Whatever that ten did to you seriously wore you out. I can see it. You shouldn't be moving on your own yet. Uncle looked over at the young shinobi, her eyes searching for something. When they either found or didn't find what they were looking for, the woman said, All right, Gaki, I'll let you help. She sent him an annoyed look. But if you tell anyone about this, I'll pound you in the paste. The blonde's response was to chuckle lightly at her threat, before leaping off from the tree they'd been stationed on, and making their way towards where Naruto knew his teammates to hopefully be. It didn't take them very long to get there, but when they did, the two shinobi immediately knew that they'd been too late. Sasuke was curled up in the fetal position, hands clawing at his neck, and a crying Sakura huddled over him while he screamed. The pink-haired girl seemed to notice them through her tears, because she turned her head and wailed, He did something to Sasuke-kun. I don't know what, but he bit him, and then Sasuke-kun just collapsed and started screaming. Naruto and Uncle looked at each other before turning back to look at Sakura. Move his hand, Sakura. We need to see something. Distraught and confused, the Kunoichi did as she was asked. After fighting her love's strong grip, Sakura finally managed to pull the raven-haired boy's hands from his skin. What he saw made her gasp, and the other two ninja grit their teeth. There, just behind Sasuke's shoulders, was the exact same seal that Anko had been branded with. Karen stared at the gates of the forest of death with a forlorn expression. She failed the second exam. Both of her teammates had died against one of the creatures in the forest, and an inhumanly large bear, which meant she was not allowed to continue on, even though she managed to secure both scrolls. It was so unfair. Not that she didn't care about the loss of her teammates, but she'd taken these exams for the opportunity of getting away from them honestly. For the chance to be promoted and be allowed to prove that she was more than just a face with glasses. But that wasn't happening now. Only one thing made it all worthwhile. She met the blonde boy that had interested her. His name was Naruto. Naruto was the reason she had survived the encounter with the bear instead of winding up like her fellow Kusaginin. He swooped down with his sword and jammed the blade right between the gargantuan carnivorous eyes. The monstrous beast thrashed around in pain for a while, its thick hide not easily penetrated before finally succumbing to its injuries and dropping to the dirt unconscious. Naruto then made a point of gouging out the animal's eyes. Kirin, shocked, questioned why the blonde had done that when the animal was already defeated. But his response surprised her. It was a choice between a quick, painless death in its sleep or a slow, agonizing one for another 7 days. The bear was already going to die from the wound in his skull, so why let it suffer? As he said this, Kirin saw how the full moon penetrated the forest treetops and surrounded the blonde like an ethereal halo. His blue eyes pinning her in place with her seemingly glowing gaze. Kirin was sure she was blushing by the way her face heated up as she looked at him. From there, the red-haired girl introduced herself and got her hero's name in return. When she asked why he'd saved her, the blonde had said that he was looking for his own squad. But when Naruto noticed her in trouble, it just seemed like the right thing to do, so he stopped and intervened. Then Kirin sorrowfully explained her own predicament to Naruto and asked what she should do. He told her to open one of the scrolls. This confused her, so he explained. One of the rules was that you couldn't open a scroll until you made it to the tower. Otherwise, you were automatically disqualified. The blonde questioned her how the project could possibly know when the scroll was open, and when she couldn't answer, Naruto told her. They were being watched. If a team opened their scroll, somehow the shinobi in the tower would know, and then send ninja to collect them, therefore disqualifying them. Kirin had been unsure at first, but one look in Naruto's eyes told her that she could trust him, even if they were from separate villages. So, accepting his advice, she bid the blonde genin goodbye, offering her Earth Scroll as thanks for saving her. Naruto took it, seeing as she was being disqualified anyway, and wished for a safe trip home before leaving back into the trees. What the blonde didn't know was that he wasn't just leaving with just Kirin's Earth Scroll, but her heart as well. I just hope we get to see each other again one day, she thought bashfully as she was led away from the forest of death. And after almost 2 hours of freaking recording, that's part 4. Huzzah! Why do I get the feeling these chapters are just gonna keep getting longer and longer until I want to tear my own hair out and eat it like a freaking ice cream? Alright. Well, first of all, I want to thank the legend themselves, Solar, for helping editing this video and providing the thumbnails, and for helping me with Discord and whatnot. I will most probably link my Discord account, my Discord server thing down below. If not, someone remind me and I will get right onto it. But in the meantime, because I don't want to waste any more time in making this longer than it already has to be, do the big. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Until next time, I'm the Chaos Master, and Chaos Control!